I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon. This is episode number 233. And today, Dan and I are back together again, and we're discussing his life-changing elk hunt in Colorado and my downright disappointing trip to North Dakota. Before we kick things off, though, we want to thank our friends at Lacrosse Boots for their support of this podcast episode. And if you're a whitetail deer hunter, and I got to believe if you're listening to this show, you probably are. Otherwise, I got to believe you're really bored with what we've been talking about over all these years. But assuming you're a whitetail deer hunter, I personally haven't found a better boot to recommend to you than one of these Lacrosse rubber knee-high boots. I really like their Arrowhead and Alpha Burley Pro models. I've been using those two over the past 6 or 7 years now, I think. You know, they're both waterproof. They're available in a number of different insulation levels for whatever temperature range you're going to be hunting in. I'm going with the 800-gram Thinsulate version this year. That seems to be warm enough for the late season, but I'm not miserable hiking around in them in the early season. Not too hot. So different insulation levels. They are comfortable enough to hike in and out for even long distances to your stand. You know, last week in Montana, it was probably 4 miles, give or take, that I was going in and out every day to that stand, and it was fine with those boots. Not to mention the rubber construction on these Alpha Burleys or on these Arrowheads. That rubber prevents them from holding on to too much odor, making them a great option for those of us who are trying to be as scent-free as possible. So, great options, and if you'd like to check out what Lacrosse Boots has to offer you and other whitetail guys and girls like us, you can head on over to lacrossefootwear.com. All right, welcome back to the Wired to Hunt podcast brought to you by Onyx. And for the first time in a pretty decent while, we are here for just a good old-fashioned Mark and Dan BS session, and it feels so good to say that.
No plans, no expectations.
I love that, because the thing for me is I'm always really good at under-promising and then occasionally over-delivering, so I think that's the game plan for today.
So basically what you're telling everyone now is you're going to tell them it's a good podcast, but we're going to way under-deliver.
Yeah, this probably just jinxed the whole thing. But whatever. Dude, I've been in just a tizzy of chaos the last couple days. Yeah. So I literally ran, this is the truth. I literally ran into my house just before starting to record this. I ran over to my son and kissed him goodnight, hurried over into my office and took off my pants.
And that's it?
Yep.
And that's it?
Yep. And it was a prerequisite to take off my pants before recording this podcast.
Wow. So you're sitting there in just your underwear.
I am, just in my underwear for you tonight. And I did that for a reason, though. It's because I was worried that I might have poison ivy on me, because I was just in the woods all day working on tree stands. And I just thought to myself, oh gosh, these are probably poison ivy covered pants. And if you sit here recording a podcast, you're going to be like touching your legs and not thinking about it and then touch your face. And I can't be having that. So pantsless for poison ivy precautions. So that's my state of mind right now.
Bingo.
So perfect way to start this podcast. What I do, there are a few things that I did have on my list of things I want to make sure we did talk about. Really just two that we have to cover. Number one, we got to talk about your elk hunt.
Okay.
And number two, we got to talk about my North Dakota hunt with Furter, because last week's podcast, you were out hunting the mountains, but me, Spencer, and Furter did a quick one, and I was just on my way from Montana to North Dakota, but no one knows what's happened since. So got to give them those updates. But that's all I got. So otherwise, it is an open highway for us to take people to whatever destination we can think of.
Just detour all the way.
Yeah. Do you have any detours you want to start with, or are you just so pumped up on elk hunting mojo that you have to just let it out?
Dude, I'm down for whatever. You know me. I don't like live by the normal rules. You know, every rule I see is basically just kind of a guideline.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily saying you have to do this. So, plus I'm just the sidekick, right, on this podcast. I don't make any decisions. You're the one in charge, right?
You live on the edge, Dan. You are the wild card, and then I'll throw this one at you then, because probably nobody cares about anything else except for, if they haven't been following along in other places, if you kill an elk. So, Did you kill an elk?
No, we did not kill an elk, but shots were fired.
Shots, plural?
Well, one shot.
Okay.
One shot. So here's what I'll do. Here's what I'm going to say. I'll just kind of get into the story.
Yes.
All right.
I want to hear it, because I told you when we talked on the phone the other day, I purposefully avoided hearing too many details because I wanted to hear it now. So I am dying to hear. Just give it to me.
All right. So here's the deal. So I learned a lot on the elk hunt that me and you went on, right? Like what to do and what not to do. The first thing that we did when we got into Colorado, like 3 a.m. Went to my buddy Adam Parr's house, crashed on his couch, got some sleep. So that means we woke up Saturday morning, got there at like 3 a.m. Saturday morning, went there, or woke up about 9 or so, got some coffee, went and got some groceries, had to make a couple stops and run some errands in town. And then we headed up to the mountains, right? Saturday. We got to the we got into camp, which a lot different than, so we stayed on private property, but we hunted all public property.
And it looked like you guys were staying in like a cabin or a house or something?
A cabin. There was no electricity. There was no running water. So we had to bring all of our own water, and all of our own food and ice and all that stuff. So we slept in a cabin. Me and Ryan slept in a cabin.
Was this specifically because they'd heard about your tent debacles and they really wanted to avoid that?
Well, I'm just lucky, and I'll tell you, as we get into the story, it's crazy because, if instead of going back to a tent and sleeping on the ground, you get to go to at least a mattress and a sleeping bag, and you're in a enclosure, not necessarily a tent. It's a game changer as far as getting a good night's sleep. Yeah. So that's kind of one thing. But anyway,
for the over 40 crowd, I guess.
Ha 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 ha.
I'm sorry. Continue.
It was up there. You had to take it, right?
Yeah. Low hanging fruit. That's
right. So anyway, I think the last time what just kicked my ass so bad when we went was, dude, we drove from Iowa to Idaho, got out of the truck and went straight up the mountain. Yeah. Like we were only at the bottom of at your truck for enough time to put our backpacks on.
Yeah. That's 30 minutes to get dressed, throw them on, and get going.
So what we did this time was we didn't hunt Saturday at all. We got to the mountain, we got camp set up, and I literally started drinking out of a gallon of water. And I drank and drank and drank, and we got acclimated. The camp was at about the cabin was at about 10-2 10,000 feet.
You're up there.
Yep. So we spent the entire rest of the evening, had a good meal, got to bed somewhat early, and, hydrated and got acclimated. And I think that changed the game for the entire week, because I wasn't suffering as bad as I was the last time we went. I mean, I felt really, really good. Yes, it was exhausting, and yes, it was tiring, and yes, it was punishing, but it was not like defeating, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, would you credit any of that to your change in physical preparation too for this one?
Yeah, I did a lot of different things. Like for what I did with you was I did a lot of like just your regular weightlifting routines with some cardio, and when I mean a regular weightlifting routine, I mean, okay, you go to the squat rack and you do 10 reps, and then you go and you do some leg extensions, and then maybe you do 10 deadlifts. This, I did like 100 deadlifts, and so, but lighter weight, or I did 100 of something. So I just wore the muscles out, and then I did Stairmasters. And one thing that I really think helped was my weighted pack hikes. And this is for like the entire trip, right? But the weighted pack hikes, I mean, because I talked to a lot of guys who went out west from flatlands like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Iowa, and they're like, there's no exercise that can prepare you for what you're going to do. And the one guy was telling me, and the best exercise that I felt worked was the weighted pack hikes. So I did a lot of putting weight on a pack and hiking for like 4 miles. That some of those took an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours, and just trying to exhaust the body. Basically was what I was trying to do. And I feel that the first couple days, man, I felt really good compared to, as the week went on, I felt, my energy was definitely draining, but we hit it hard for 6 straight days.
Yeah. Well, that's good though. And when I was seeing what you were doing this summer with those hikes, just like you said, nothing but hiking with a heavy pack can really replicate that. And it's so important. It's not the glamour muscles and those, curls and stuff that are going to help you in the mountains. It's, can you slog up a hill all day with a heavy load and just keep going and keep going?
Yep.
And I'm glad that helped out.
Yeah, absolutely helped out. And I'll tell you what, I focus so much on my lower part of my body, like my legs and cardio, that I hardly did any curls or triceps or I did do shoulder press and a lot of rowing machine for the back, but doing the bench press, the curls, the triceps, I hardly did any of that at all.
Yeah. Now, was your wife upset with your regimen this time? Because it sounds like your glamour muscles just weren't up to par than this year for her. Is that part of the strategy to keep child number 4 from happening?
No. Child number 3 keeps child number 4 from happening.
I don't believe it. I won't believe it till I hear about the procedure, man.
Yeah, you're right. I need to just do it.
I don't know why you haven't.
I know. I guess I live on the wild side, Mark.
You live on the edge. You're tiptoeing right on the precipice of disaster at all times.
Dude, in order to have a baby, you have to have sex. And with 3 kids, it's like that bell curve just goes way down.
Okay, I understand.
Now we get it.
I can totally understand. Okay, so no sex, lots of exercise though. You're right. Feeling better at the beginning of this trip. Continue with this story.
Right. So, dude, it was day 1 was out of like videos that I've seen. And I'm not talking about elk running around everywhere, because we got out of the camp and I got introduced to something called deadfall.
Oh yeah.
This trip. And with high winds, the beetle kill, and dude, I'm talking about trees stacked on trees, anything from knee high to chin high that you're having to climb over or under or around. And if you're walking a straight line on the mountains, let's say, should take about 10 minutes to 15 minutes. We're talking about 45 minutes of deadfall in a quarter mile, and it's nasty. So, then we dropped down to about 9.5 from camp, 10.2. We dropped down over the course of about a half mile to a creek, walk another half mile up. We're back somewhere around 10.2. Then we start getting out of the creek to these benches where all the elk sign are. And, the first setup, we hear something. We're like, hey, let's set up here. We call, this is day one. We call, nothing happens.
Sorry if I can time out. Did you guys, or Adam, right? Adam was your buddy?
Yeah, Adam.
He knew this area, right? So did you guys have like a game plan, like, hey, we're going to go to a place? Or was it, hey, we're just going to walk in this direction and see if we hear anything and stop every time we hear? Like, what was the game plan as you were doing this hike?
Right. The game plan was, he pretty much told us the night before, and he showed us on a map, hey, we're looking for these bench types. It's where we come off a steep. There's like a steep drop off on the mountain, and it kind of flattens out, and then it gets steep again. And these flatter areas are what the elk really seem to congregate on. That's where they seem to bed throughout the day. That's their access routes to these meadows where they're going and eating grass. So a lot of looking at the topographic map and trying to find these benches where the elk were at. Okay. So he'd been out there the past 3 years. So he had a good idea of where we were heading.
Okay. So you're heading towards these benches. You're getting there. You hear something. You set up. What are you doing?
So we set up, and Adam's like, okay, who gets first shot? I look at Ryan. I say, paper, rock, scissors for first shot. My buddy Ryan came with me. He's like, okay, but 1, 2, 3, shoot. He wins. Okay, so he gets first shot. So what he's doing is wherever we think the elk are going to come, then Ryan, and then Adam is however far back behind him, kind of calling a combination of bugles and cow calls. And then I'm off on a flank. So if maybe he hits it, I get a secondary follow-up shot, or if he misses, I get a secondary follow-up shot, or something along those lines.
Yeah. And you're just hearing like movement, or you actually heard elk bugling in your direction?
We heard movement, like cracking going through the deadfall, right?
Okay.
Didn't hear any bugles. So nothing happens on the first try. And what we're doing is we're working our way up the mountain with the wind blowing in our face, the thermal's coming downhill. And then what the goal is by the time you work your way up, you're to a point where the thermal switch for the late morning, and then you're coming down, and then you maybe go find another meadow, and then you work your way down.
Yeah. Right.
So we get up to this meadow, set up, nothing happens, set up, nothing happens. And we heard, and then finally, dude, I'm telling you, it is a life-changing event. And I'm not talking about what we heard in Colorado, where we hear one bugle, probably.
Oh yeah, we didn't hear crap in
1 mile.
Yeah,
1 mile away, we heard one bugle. Maybe.
But was I when I was telling you what it could be like? Was I right?
Oh, dude, it was nuts. I hear this bugle across the drainage on another side, which sparked another bugle on our side, which sparked another bugle. So we heard 4 elk bugle, 3 in the drainage that we were at, and 1 across the creek in the same drainage. So clear across it. And I look at my buddy Ryan. I just that's this big smile on my face. I'm like, oh my God. And 1 was close enough to where you could hear the chuckle at the end of it.
Yeah, there's that, like a little bit of like the rasp and like the air, and it's
like the yeah, right, yeah. So we hear these bugles. 1's close enough. We can hear the chuckle, and so I'm getting fired up. I don't even know what to do. Luckily, my buddy Adam there is like, he's been in that situation before. He's like, okay, we're gonna work our way up. We're gonna continue with our plan, and we worked our way up to the next meadow, heard a couple bugles, heard a couple bugles. And then, which is crazy, the sun came out and it shut off, right? We kept calling a little bit. We kept calling, nothing, shut off. So we climb up this meadow, and then there's this really steep embankment. But at the top of this incline is a flat bench. It's a little open, but what it will allow us to do is scan the opposite side of the drainage to look to see if any elk are coming out on these meadows or if we can see any movement. So we climb up. We're sitting. So we started right when we got off the creek. We're at 10-2. Now we're at 11-1. And obviously this is a fast version of the story. We pop into a couple more meadows. We eat lunch, pop into a couple more meadows.
What'd you have for lunch?
I had some Cliff Bars and then some Packaroons from a company called Heather's Choice.
What's a Packaroon?
I don't know. It's like this dense protein bar. It's like they're really tasty, dude. They're really tasty.
Okay, was it you or was it Furter who brought like nothing but Cliff Bars for like all of their meals except for dinner? Was that you or Idaho?
Oh yeah, that was me on Idaho.
Oh, I couldn't live like that. So you had a Packaroon, which sounds like kind of similar though, right?
But it's way soft. They're really soft. They're it's like a protein brownie, but full of all organic stuff.
So you thumbs up for that?
Oh, thumbs up. And because we were out of a camp instead of a tent, and we could drive our vehicles there, we were able to bring more food like bananas and apples and carrots and stuff like that. Yeah. So every day, instead of eating, straight Cliff Bars, I was able to have a banana or a apple.
Dude, right there. All the other things you mentioned that you think helped you, none of them made a difference. It was just the fact that you went off of a straight Cliff Bar diet. That was what you had wrong last time.
Yeah, probably. Well, I couldn't go to the bathroom last time, and this time I didn't have a problem going to the bathroom.
That'll change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
So no Cliff Bars, Packaroons, and whatever else.
Water.
Sorry, yeah, water.
So we chilled there for about 40 minutes. We take a little snooze, and it's kind of funny because my buddy Ryan has this real fancy watch, and it tells you calories burned and elevation and all this stuff. And to get to that point, we burnt 1,700 calories just in the walk-in.
Nice.
And dude, I'm telling you, over the course of the entire trip, we were burning anywhere between 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day.
I love
it. That's pretty cool to know. And you get back to camp and you're trying to literally force feed yourself, and you can't even make it to 4,000 calories because you're so full.
Guilt-free eating.
Oh yeah, guilt-free eating. And then you wake up, you stuff your face with a breakfast until you're almost uncomfortable, and you hike, and in an hour and a half you're hungry again. Mm-hmm. So yeah. That was nuts. So anyway, back to day one, because it's kind of like day one and day three were the most interesting. We get up there, then we kind of hike through this next meadow. We're coming around, work our way up, do some calling sequences similar to turkey hunting, right? You set up, you call, set up, call, set up, call, and hopefully something would come out. And long story short, we turn around, we head down the mountain. And as we're heading down the mountain, we head all the way back down to where we started in the very most bottom meadow, and overcast starts to come in. A storm comes in, and then it starts raining again. And then something happened in the weather.
I hate to keep interrupting you.
Yeah.
Because you're getting momentum here, and your story flowing, your juices are flowing here. But I gotta ask, if we're comparing and contrasting last trip to this trip, last trip when it started to rain, you would put a black garbage bag on. Did you bring the garbage bag back, or did you real rain gear this time?
No, I had a real rain jacket this time. Okay. So I prepared, and it worked, and I was happy.
Oh man, that is one of my greatest memories of all hunting trips ever, is looking at you in your parka / garbage bag.
Just like literally, but I'm telling you, these rainstorms that we witnessed out in Colorado, they went away after 15, 20 minutes, right? It didn't rain all day long. Like
Yeah.
we were in Idaho.
Yeah, we had a couple of rough ones. So, okay, sorry. You were in
No,
good
you're
rain
good.
gear. Continue.
Okay, rain gear's good. It's on check. I'm staying dry. We're heading down the mountain, and as we're heading down the mountain, he lets one bugle, and that an elk all the way across the drainage on the other side of the creek bugles. So we work our way even further down, all the way down, and so we're like, okay, we got to cross the creek. We're going to get up into the next drainage, and we're going to go chase that bull, because that was our strategy. Try to get one to bugle and go chase it, right?
Yep. So were you kind of doing what you and me had wanted to do? We never had that right opportunity, but basically you hear one bugle, you just get as close as you think you can,
Yep.
and then call if you think you're right in their business?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And this is where it gets good, all right? So we're heading down. We're getting ready to cross the creek. We're probably about 100 yards from the creek, and there's another bugle that just rips off right back from where we just came from. And Adam goes, I bet you anything that bull bugled in his bed. So we bugle again, and he responds again. We bugle again. He responds. So we're trying to locate him, and he's coming from the exact same spot, right? And he's like, let's go. This one's closer. Let's go get him. Go back up the mountain. We get into, and as we're getting closer, so like every 100 yards, every 200 yards, we bugle, and it's coming from the same exact spot. And this dark timber is so thick and nasty, you can't even see 50 yards in front of you, right? So we're getting real aggressive, and we're going right straight towards this bugle. And the good thing about how this all played out was, with the cloud cover and a slight drizzle, the afternoon thermals were coming down. They weren't going up because it was cooler, and the rain kind of was pushing the thermals down. So it wasn't raining, but it was kind of sprinkling. Thermals were going down, and we're getting closer, and we're getting closer. And now we're so close that when he bugles, you can feel it. Like, dude, like you can feel it in your skin.
Yeah.
When that high pitch part of the bugle goes, your ears just kind of tickle a little bit. Like, that's how close we were, right? So we get up to this spot, and by the grace of God, there is an opening right there in the in this dark, thick deadfall timber, and it's offering a shooting lane of like 20 to 30 yards. And Adam goes, okay, you set up here, Dan, you flank over here, and I'm going to drop back and start calling.
So Ryan got first shot until he actually let an arrow go, or were you guys rotating on every setup? Not
every setup, first shot, just like the first shot. So we're gonna get into position, and every time we put Ryan in, like until he got a shot, it was Ryan's shot. Basically.
That was a high stakes game of rock, paper, scissors.
I know.
That could have been the whole trip. You might have had him leading off.
Yeah, it could have been. So,
did you have any strategy when you went into that rock, paper, scissors, or just go with your gut?
I just threw. I didn't even think about it, because you think about it and then you start messing up.
Yeah, but in retrospect, now that you lost, do you think you should have approached it with any different ideas or tactics?
Probably. I don't know. I really wasn't thinking about it. I was like, okay, I don't have a quarter in my pocket. Let's think of a fair way to do this. So paper, rock, scissors, 1 out of 1. That's all it was.
Yeah, that's high stakes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So Ryan's up to bat. I drop down a little bit lower, and I come around to another little clearing that's about the size of a small bedroom. I mean, if the elk was going to come my way, I would have shot him at 10 yards type of deal. So Adam drops back behind Ryan down the mountain, and he starts taking sticks and branches and shit and just cracking them and throwing logs and beating them and bugling and cow calling. And so what he was doing is sounding like he was running around gathering up some cows. Yeah.
That's what if I had to guess, that's what it sounded like. And every time he bugled, and now, we've pushed into about 50 yards of this elk, right? Can't see him yet. We know he's above us, but we can't see him yet. And he's hammering these bugles, and every one is just like a, just crazy. And I'm telling you, man, to all the listeners out there, if you ever get the opportunity to go on an elk hunt, it's going to be brutal. It just depends on where you go, but it's like what we did. It's brutal. It's physical. It's a mental game. But if you get the opportunity to hear an elk bugle as close as we did, you will think about it every single day for the rest of your life. I'm telling you, it was a life-changing event.
It's so awesome. And right there, right in the middle of Dan's story, I'm going to stop us and take a quick break to thank our partners at onX. They are the makers of the onX Hunt app, which I've been mentioning each week for a while now, and I've been using each week for a while now. Now the hunting season's kicked off, that's just going to continue. I was using it in Montana, as I told you about, while I was actually going in and out hunting, and when I was tracking that buck. I'm going to be using it next week when I'm going to hunt elk in Montana. I'll be using it 2 weeks after that when I kick off my whitetail season here in Michigan, hunting this new property I've got permission on, and my main Holyfield property, tracking different stand locations, tracking in and out access routes, all that kind of stuff. When I head up to Minnesota for the Boundary Waters hunt, I'll be using it then a ton leading up to that, as I'm still trying to figure out where the heck to go. That's a story for another day. But long story short on this is that app is a great tool to use on your phone or your computer, wherever you might be. It's got topo maps, it's got aerial maps, it has property information, property owner information, it has public land parcel borders and information. You can mark your locations, you can mark your tracks, you can measure distances, you can measure areas. I could go on and on. Needless to say, it's something worth checking out. If you're interested in getting a membership or downloading some of their specific state maps, you can get 20% off using the promo code WIRED. That's WIRED. And you can get the onX Hunt app at your favorite mobile store, or you can learn more over at onxmaps.com.
So anyway, I hear some cracking. Like he's up on his feet now or something. So I kind of dropped down a little bit, so I'm way low, and I'm trying to look under this deadfall. So I can't see Ryan anymore, but every time Adam bugles or calls, this bull is responding, and he's bugling again. And like I said, it's a glorious thing. So as Adam's calling, the next bugle sounded like it was further away. Maybe he stood up or turned around. So I thought, oh my God, this, there's a herd of cows or something, and he's heading off with the cows or whatever. And just as I thought that, Adam did one hell of a calling sequence, like break some sticks and raked a tree and made a bugle and some cow calls. And he turned around, and now I could look up and I could see the tops of his antlers. He was really close, still responding with every bugle that Adam set out. And I can see the tops of his antlers. I could see part of his head, but that was it. And he's swaying them back and forth, almost like a moose does. It was weird. He just really, I don't know, like he was showing off to somebody almost.
Did this seem like a big bull?
Yeah. From what I could see, like every elk is huge to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And plus it was really thick and nasty. So it's not like I had a perfect clear shot at him. So, and then I could hear him stomping and pawing. So it was almost like he was freaking pissed, really, really pissed off. And something happened, and all of a sudden he just committed, and it sounded like a car being pushed through the woods, through the timber, just cracking and coming through. It wasn't even like he was trying to go around anything, but straight through it. And then there was this moment of silence, and I heard thump. And I knew what that sound was, and that was Ryan letting an arrow go.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I put my arrow back quick in my quiver. I run up, and there I see Ryan like looking back at me like he'd just seen a ghost type of deal, like because he killed an elk before like 6 years ago with a rifle on a private ranch, something almost like shooting fish in a barrel type of thing.
Yeah.
And he and Ryan was like, I hit him. I'm like, did you hit him? He's like, I hit him. And so we just kind of wait for Adam to come up, because Adam didn't know what happened. And I said, which way did he run? He's like, he ran that way, but then I lost him. And remember, this is some of the thickest, nastiest shit that I've ever witnessed. Right. And so if you walk 50 yards ahead of someone, you're lost. So I start whistling for Adam. Adam comes up. We kind of gather ourselves. We say, okay, where did you think you hit him? And Ryan goes, I think I hit him a little forward, but high, to where I think I got high lung. And I'm like, dude, if you got high lung, man, we're in business, man. We're in business. And so we wait just like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then we start making our way to the impact and this was inside 20 yards where he had this shot. So probably closer to 15 if I had to guess, but he hit him just a little bit high. He thought, because I wasn't able to see the shot or the impact. Once this elk came down the side of the mountain towards Ryan, I lost all sight of him, and it was just my hearing from then on. And so we kind of we're looking on the ground, nothing. We're looking for some stumps, nothing. And then Ryan finds his arrow, and it's broken off, and total penetration. And this is generous, probably about 4 inches, maybe less. So what we're thinking is we hit the shoulder, and he was shooting a mechanical broadhead, and it hit it, and it just stopped basically through the meat of the front shoulder, hit the bone, and just stopped right there. But we did our due diligence, and we grid searched for 20, 30 minutes, no blood, no upturned soil or anything from where we could see him running. And long story short, that was Ryan's first archery shot at an elk. And there's nothing you say to a guy after that. I could have sat there and been like, hey, sport, it's going to be okay. Keep your head up, shit like that. It's like you had an opportunity like that, and it didn't happen. Right. So, yeah. So we're talking about, we're like, Ryan, what do you think this bull, how big was he? And Ryan goes, I don't know too much about elk, but I'm saying somewhere between 250 and 300. And then he starts to describe the characteristics. And he said, all I know is I saw the end of one of his, and I guess they call him a whale tail.
The whale tail. Yeah.
The whale tail. So I guess the whale tail is something that's predominant on 6x6s. So Adam thinks it was bigger than that. So maybe, I don't know, between 300 and 320 class bull. So, and from what I saw, it wasn't like hugely wide, but they were really tall from what I could see, or well, kind of, they flare back. I don't know. So from what I could see, so it was a good, decent bull, and it just didn't happen.
Bummer. Yeah. Sounds like a very exciting day, but that is the ultimate bummer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now here's something that I knew I wasn't necessarily a shooter, but there was a chance that if this elk came around the other way, I would have had a shot on him. And for some reason, I was not fired up like I would have been if I was deer hunting for some reason. Like when that deer shows up and you're, I don't know, you're already, you get buck fever, I guess, or you get that huge adrenaline dump. Like I know it's going to happen, and I know I'm drawing back. I didn't get that. I was really clear, and that was strange to me.
Do you think that was more because of the scenario, elk hunting, different species, different place, or was it more because you knew that you were runner up?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, I think for deer hunting, you have a real low heart rate and then it goes to a real high heart rate. My heart rate was already up, right, from climbing up the mountain. So it's not like if I had an adrenaline rush, my heart was going to do anything more than what it was already doing. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
So I don't know. I was clear, I was ready, and I was focused. So that's nuts. I thought I was going to be like losing my shit.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't lose your shit later in the trip, possibly, right?
Yeah. Right.
So tell me what happens next.
I'm going to fast forward to day 3. All right. So day 2, we go back to the same area. We hear 2 bugles. We chase them. Nothing happens. We have an encounter with a calf. Nobody takes a shot at it just because, I mean, in light of what just happened the day before, we felt like we had hit something right.
Yeah.
And then Adam had to head back into town to his house to meet someone for get internet set up in his new house. So me and Ryan were kind of on our own. We had our Onyx maps. We were, looking at where we needed to go. Oh my God. We had a hike that went from 10-2 to 11-1, and it was straight up. And it was literally one of the most punishing things and grueling things I have ever physically done in my entire life. Period. I don't know how many calories we burnt, but I was losing my mind climbing this, like mental failure, getting mad, getting angry because we were going up the same deadfall, but we were going at like a 40-degree angle.
Do you think this watch that Ryan had that told you your exact elevation, do you think that was a blessing or a curse? Because I could see it being a little scary, or a little bit every time you actually look at that number, like, oh God, we've gone 700 feet, we've gone 1,200 feet. Did that make misery more exaggerated?
Not necessarily, because I wouldn't ask him until we were done with the punishment.
Okay.
Right. I never asked before because whenever Adam said, hey, we just got to pop up this ridge, like that's what someone who lives out there says.
Yeah.
If I was up there and I was going to tell somebody what we had to do, I would look at him straight in the face and I would say, I'm going to try to kill you right now.
Yep.
So that's what that punishment was like. And we went back down the mountain. He went home. We went kind of up a little bit, up to a different drainage, worked our way down. And I was beat after that day. Got up the next morning, got into the truck, and we went to a completely different part of the mountain. And we walk into this little secluded drainage / meadow, and it was one of the most beautiful thing. Like the sun's coming up over the mountains, and it's just beautiful. A light, there's some clouds in the air, no bugles, and this is a learning experience for me. And it's something that I made a mistake one time during this trip, and I didn't make it again. So you hike in just your base layers because you're sweating balls by the time you get to where you went. And I felt, hey, I'm still going to be hot in 20 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm just going to sit here in my base layers and while Adams drops back and calls, and now I'm up to bat first, right? So I get I guess what you would call the favorable position. And we're looking across this drainage, and it's like, 30 yards from where I'm sitting to the opposite side. So it was kind of steep on both sides. So if something came out, you could shoot across the drainage at it. And I set up and I start getting cold, and my backpack's behind a tree. So I get out, and as I stand up and turn around, I hear something on the other side take off and run away. And I'm just like, I just screwed up, like a potential opportunity, because, we could hear elk across the drainage, like just working around in there, walking back and forth and stuff. And then I started shivering because I was cold. So I needed to go get some more layers on. So I stood up and walked around the tree, and there must have been something close on the other side that busted me, and it took off running. Fast forward about 20 more minutes, and we all meet up back behind these trees, And all of a sudden we hear something run off, and we look, and it's a cow had snuck up behind us. So our bows are all down on the ground, and Ryan goes, "Oh man, there's another cow coming right at us." And it wasn't a cow. It was a bull. And if I thought that the bull on day one was huge, you could have put that bull's rack into this bull's rack. It was, and I don't know shit about scoring, and I don't know anything. So I'm not going to try to say a score, but I've watched in my day a lot of YouTube videos and stuff, and I would put this elk up there with any other elk I've seen on TV. Just gigantic. And it got to it came in silent behind us, and we looked, and I grabbed my bow, I knock an arrow, and I'm getting ready to draw, and it runs away. It wasn't like I had a shot anyway, but it was one of those things where it's just like, oh, I got to see it. It's like it made eye contact with me. It was mind-blowingly huge. And
wow.
Again, I'm from Iowa. I've seen now at this point in my life, I've seen 2 bull elk somewhat close, right? Yeah. In real life. So it could have been a 300 incher, and the other one could have been a 250, but I know it was big, and I was just jacked up about it. And so if it ended right there, I would call that a successful trip. But we had 5 more days to go. Unfortunately, this is where everything slows down. Not another bugle. It got warm, and the weather turned nice, and we bounced around every day, and every day was just basically hiking and setting up on fresh sign and doing our due diligence and grinding. And unfortunately, nothing happened.
Man, sounds like a pretty awesome trip, though. Those first few days, like you just said, makes for a success, right?
Right. I'm telling you right now, I will go elk hunting every year for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it gets in your blood.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's fun. And it was not only the hardest thing I've ever had to do physically, but like I was better prepared mentally for it this time because I remembered what that punishment breathing was like. So it was like I had time to prepare so it's like I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah, that helps. That helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So long story short, dude, that's my Colorado trip in a nutshell. It was long, but
I'm glad that you got that experience, though. I felt so bad after our trip. I'd been talking it up so much and telling you about how the year before was nuts and having those moments like you described, and it obviously didn't pan out for us on that one, but now you know.
Yeah.
Now you know.
It was nuts, dude, and it's one of those things where I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I wish everybody has the opportunity to experience something like that, because whitetail hunting is one thing, but when you have a 800-pound animal, 900-pound animal running around making the loudest noises you've ever heard, it's an experience in itself, dude.
Yeah. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I leave for an elk hunt next week.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not even really, or at least not until now, haven't been that excited about it. I've been looking forward to whitetail stuff in October. I'm like planning all this stuff out, and I'm kind of like over traveled a little bit, so I'm just kind of burnt out and kind of just want to spend some family time. You know, I was gone for the last 11 days, and I'm home for like 6. And I've just been thinking, man, I wish I didn't schedule this trip right after that. I really would just like 2, 3, 4 weeks at home instead of 6 days. But all that aside, you did give me a new bump of excitement for that bugling fest that hopefully I'll be experiencing here next week. So Thank you for that.
I'll tell you though, it was tough. I hadn't been on a big trip like this. I've been to the ATA show. That's like basically a 3-day event, but I was gone a total of, I left on the 31st and I got back on it would have been the 8th. So I was gone 8 days from my family, and it sucked. I mean, I'm not going to lie, man. I I wouldn't say I got homesick, but I missed my kids and I missed my wife. So being able to come home and see them again that's very enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely relate to you more on that now on this trip. Yeah, definitely was feeling that. It was different knowing that Everett was back home and not, just not being a part of the daily life with him. And I loved getting pictures and videos and stuff that my wife was sending, but then that also was just like, I just want to like be there. So it's definitely different. And like I said, I'm not looking forward to leaving again right away, but
that's my elk hunt. I want to know a little bit about this North Dakota trip, because you're successful in Montana, and then you crossed the border. What happened?
Yeah, so had that great hunt in Montana, and sorry that we're not getting to talk about it at all. But we already talked about with Furter and Spencer. Anything you need to know that you don't know about that we should cover in 2 minutes here? Or are you good?
Well, I'll just ask you for the coordinates after you're done recording.
Yeah. How much you got in your savings account, Dan? We might be able to negotiate something.
$30.
Okay. We will not be able to negotiate something. Okay, so I kill my buck in Montana. I'm driving towards North Dakota on that first day, and I actually get kind of sick in the car. Or maybe it was more that I was really exhausted. I think at that point I was just not feeling great, and I had to get a podcast up and do all this kind of stuff. And long story short, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get to camp tonight. I'm just going to get in a hotel room. I'm going to get this work done. I'm going to shower. I was all bloody and gross after having gutted and recovered that deer that day. So yeah, get to the hotel room. I ended up getting nauseous and horrible headache and pass out 8:30 that night in the hotel. Next day, get up, get some more work done, start driving to North Dakota. I don't end up getting to our spot in North Dakota till that evening at 6 o'clock in the evening, so I can't hunt that night. Josh was out hunting, so I decided I'm just going to get out there and get up on one of these big bluffs that overlooks this river bottom that we were hunting and see what I could see. Just try to get eyes on something, because Josh had been there hunting for 3 days, and up to this point, he had not seen hardly anything. He had seen, I think, 1 year-and-a-half-old buck and a handful of does every day. And he'd been up on the hills glassing in the mornings trying to see where are all these deer, and was not seeing the number of deer that we were expecting. But he was seeing some other hunters. There wasn't any other whitetail hunters, but there is guys out there chasing other western species, muleys, whatever.
Now, sorry to interrupt, but this is the same area that you guys went shed hunting at this spring.
Yes.
Okay.
And we found a good number of sheds in there, and we scouted it, and we saw a good sign. So it looked really good. We had really high hopes for this spot. But Josh's time there was not showing anything good. I show up, I sit in this butte, I start glassing. I don't see crap. I just see a couple does, and I can see a mile in either direction. I mean, I can cover a big chunk of ground that you should be seeing deer coming out, crossing this river, coming out into some of these openings, moving in and around the cottonwood groves. Nothing. So that's concerning. That night we regrouped. Josh hardly saw anything again that night. The next morning I'm like, all right, well, I'm not just going to go sit blindly in an area where we're not seeing anything. We need to keep learning. We need to find these deer. So the next morning, again, I go to another spot, try to glass that. Again, don't see anything. So after an hour, I scoot out of there and I start driving roads, trying to see, are there any deer in any of these? Are there some private land fields that are pulling all the deer? What's going on? Drive around, hardly anything at all. So we get back to camp now. This is Josh's day 4, I think. And, we're kind of at a loss. He's not seeing any deer. These 2 scouting sessions are showing really, really poor numbers. We still haven't seen a single mature buck, and we're down to 2 days left, 2.5 days left or whatever. So finally we're sitting there midday, and I kind of had this idea pop in my head. What are we doing in this kind of area? It's not like hunting in Michigan or Iowa where there's tons of cover and you obviously wouldn't see these bucks. If there were deer in this area, I was pretty confident that we should see some sign of them. There should be deer moving. There's not down on the river bottoms. There weren't a bunch of hunters, so I didn't think these deer were crazy overpressured if they were in there. So I threw out the idea, instead of wasting our time here where we've not gotten a single indication of there being a deer we actually want to hunt and shoot over the last 4 or 5 days or whatever, however long Josh had been there, plus since I was there, what if we relocate? What if we spend, we're sacrificing some sits, but what if we just keep looking till we actually find a deer we want to shoot and then make a move on those deer? Right now, we're not seeing anything that really is indicative of worthwhile time spent in a tree. Is, actually trying to fill a tag at least. So I had seen some other public land a couple hours north of here that had looked really good in the maps in the past. I'd never been there, but it looked good, and there was a lot of food. It looked like food sources, fields that was on the public land or adjacent to that public land. I thought, that's the kind of stuff that's kind of a gimme this time of year, or at least is like a much more sure sign than what we had here. There was no food by where we were hunting in this spot. So I thought, let's go back to the well. I know this is like a tried and true strategy that's worked for me. It worked for me in Montana. Find public land bedding that's close to private land food, get up in there, and try to get eyes on something that says, yes, there are deer here, and then hunt the public behind it. So, So after mulling that over for a little bit, we finally decided, what, let's swing for the fences. Let's try it. And we were going to drive up there that night, and have that night and the next morning to do some scouting, and then we would hunt the next night and next morning, and then we had to go.
Yeah.
So we do the drive, we get up there, we have an hour to drive around that night, drive around the back roads around this public land. It looks really good, and I end up finding a field with a whole bunch of deer in it that's on public land, and I get my spotting scope out, and I see a couple pretty nice bucks that possibly would be a shooter for me, for sure would be a shooter for Josh. So I'm like, all right, bingo. This is exactly what I wanted to see. We've got a huntable area with huntable deer, and we've actually got something to work with here versus what we had before. So I felt great about that. The next day we went in, scouted another area in the morning, and hung stands midday for the next morning. Really cool stuff, but the most interesting and important stuff happened that night. We go and sneak into that spot where I saw those bucks. We had a pretty good wind, what looked like it was going to be a pretty good wind for this spot. I had seen most of these deer come out of kind of this inside corner of this field, and they were feeding out within sight of a road in daylight, which was interesting to me, and it told me that they weren't getting hunted. So I felt pretty good about our chances going into the next day that they'd probably do something pretty similar, since they didn't seem like they were, particularly worried about hunters, and this was almost a week into the season there. So I told Josh, if you want, I'd probably recommend the best spot would be that inside corner where most of those deer came out. So he snuck in there with a stand. I went to another area farther down the field where I had seen some of these deer feeding. There weren't any trees there, just grass and brush. But I thought I'll just tuck in that brush, sit in the ground, and hopefully watch Josh shoot a deer. If something gets past him or if something pops on a different spot, I'll back clean up down here. And the basic gist of that night is that it went almost exactly like I thought it was going to. These deer started popping out into that field really early, like 2-3 hours before dark. They were very comfortable. It seemed like the main thing they were feeding in this field, there's some kind of weed that I'm not familiar with what it was, but it looks like they had also just planted some kind of cover crop, maybe turnips or radishes or something, that were just starting to come out of the ground. And I think that was probably what they were feeding on, because I know, those fresh turnip greens or radish greens or whatever that stuff sometimes can be really attractive right now. So I think that's what they're keying in on. These deer start piling out. We've seen a bunch of does. I have a buck come out close to me that is like a nice 2-year-old. He's feeding around, and then that wind shifts completely around, like on a dime. Spins around, blows right back into the cover that we're thinking all these deer are bedded in. All these deer start spooking. I hear deer blowing behind me. There was a buck that had circled around me. He disappears. The deer that were out in the field near Josh went taking off, and we're sitting there with like an hour of daylight left, just defeated. Like, oh man, this was setting up perfect. We had made this, we took this risk. We got to this new spot. It was working out perfectly. I was thinking like, oh man, this is amazing. It's going to work out. And the wind kind of ruined it. But as daylight continues, somehow more deer start showing up, now with the new wind even. And here comes a buck. Here comes a buck. Here comes 6 does. Here come 8 does. Here comes another buck. And while there's this like decent-ish buck kind of near me that I'm watching, I get a text from Josh saying I got a shooter at 60 yards or something I can't get a shot at. And a really nice, what was at least a 3-year-old, maybe an older buck, had come out just out of range from him, like 45, 50 yards out in front of him, but passing through some thick stuff. and then moved out into the field at like 60 or 70. I think it was a big 8-pointer, but a split brow tine, I think is what he said. And so he had that big buck out in front of him like 60 yards for a long time, never came any closer. He started moving off. Then another nice buck came popping out, but at 70. So we found this little honey hole spot. Josh was just, 10, 15 yards off where, it would have worked out. He got some serious buck fever. He had an awesome adrenaline rush that he was telling me about afterwards that, that's an awesome feeling to get that first buck fever of the year. So it made the trip all worth it, I think, just with that. Like, just to have a fun encounter, just so he could see some deer, because it had been really slow going for him up to that point. So I felt really good about it because, I just wanted him to have a good time at this point. I was feeling, it was all gravy for me since I already filled my tag. But that was a fun night, close encounters. Next morning, we went into this spot that we had set up the day before. And this was like we're just swinging for the fences. We knew it's early season. We've never been here before, but we decided we would almost try like a bump and dump type thing where we were just going to plow right into the thickest, best looking like bedding, knowing that we're going to blow anything out of there as we go in there, set the stand, and just pray that maybe we could catch them coming back the very next morning, the one time they come back in before getting all, boogered out of there. It did not work, but there weren't many better options for that morning sit. So we tried that. That didn't work, and that was it. That was the North Dakota trip. It was, a day of it was me recovering. A day of it was almost 2 days of it was scouting around trying to find deer, and then a day and a half of it was actually hunting. But I'm glad I'm glad that we spent more time to find those deer versus sitting in a tree and seeing a doe a night in the same spot where we were before, just because we didn't want to try something new. So
right.
It was cool. It was cool just to be out there, and that was that first kind of trip for Furter. So I think he learned a lot from it, and I think it was just a good experience for him too, and we had a good time. So that was Absolutely. North Dakota, and got back here to Michigan, and just trying to get a bunch of stuff done here in my 6 days I've got before the elk hunt.
Is that elk hunt archery?
Yep, archery, Montana. And before I continue discussing my last few things I've been up to here in Michigan before that Montana trip, I want to take a quick break for our last break of this episode to hear from our friends at Whitetail Properties.
This week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Jeff Probst, a land specialist out of Missouri. And Jeff is going to be talking to us about getting started filming your own hunts.
Well, I filmed personally. My son and I did for a long time. I was involved in it for over 20 years. My son and I filmed together for about 15 years, and pretty much retired from it now. But I guess the first thing is don't skimp on your equipment. If you're wanting to, particularly if you're wanting to try to do something on a professional level, get good quality equipment. Obviously, high definition cameras. The cameras have changed so much since we were in it. I mean, they've got these small little handheld cameras now that take just about as good a quality footage as the old big cameras we used to carry. And, get good quality footage and get a good mic. Don't go with an onboard mic on the cameras that come with it. Buy a shotgun mic of good quality. Spend the money, do it right. Use a tree arm when you're in a tree. You get nice, smooth, steady pans. And when you're on the ground, if it's feasible, you use a tripod. Just keep your footage nice and steady, whether you're in a tree or on the ground. But the big thing is to don't skimp on equipment. Buy good stuff, and it'll show with your footage. The quality will show through.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Jeff currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Probst. That's PROPST.
I went to that new property I've got permission on the west side of the state today and hung 4 stands. It's very last minute, much later than I usually like to, but the guy that's out there that's also on this property, he is kind of putzing around it a lot of time, checking it out on like a gator or like a UTV kind of deal. Yeah. So he, is kind of believes that these deer are pretty comfortable with his presence on that as often as he goes through there. So we kind of use that to mask us, getting a tree stand hung. So we went in there with that thing just like he usually does, left that going, hung the stands, got out of there. So, I'd much rather be getting it done a month ago, but it is what it is. Better to have something going than not. So it's good to get that work done. And back here on the main spot, the Holyfield spot, I've got no good news there. No pictures of him. I checked one camera, and that back food plot where that camera was, the plot is like a dirt field. I don't know what happened, but the Nebraskas aren't coming in like they usually do. So that was a bust, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
So
I got October 1st is a Sunday this year, so I don't even know if I'm going to hunt or not, but I think I'm going to, whether it's going to be around home or back at the main farm. It's I'm a firm believer of stay out of the timber in September. So I got trail cameras that I've only checked one time this entire summer, and it pisses me off just a little bit that I haven't had the time to go do it. But hopefully that translates into just less pressure on the farm. So we will see. I probably won't check my, unless I maybe go down there at some point. I don't think I'm going to be checking my trail cameras until that first week of October.
Yeah, well, that's probably, like you said, probably a good thing. I've definitely laid off checking summer cameras significantly. I think I checked cameras once. I put cameras out at the beginning of August, checked them once. Now they're just soaking.
But just like the deer shift, man, I always try to get like the last week in August, take my trail cameras off of my mineral stations and put them in pinch points and put them in fence crossings and, historically good places where maybe a scrape or two might pop up. But I haven't done that, so I'm going to be a little bit behind. I should still be able to go do it before the rut hits, but, I don't know, man.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I'm not necessarily worried about it. It's just the fact that I won't have like my typical September data that I like to have. Once the deer go hard horn, they have that shift, and I like to catch that shift on trail camera. Yeah. However, this year it seems like I won't have that.
Yeah, I got more bad news for you.
Uh-oh.
October 1st is on a Monday.
It's on a Monday?
It's on a Monday. I just pulled up my calendar.
Well, son of a gun.
Yeah. Wah, wah. Take the day off.
No way, dude.
Dude, here's the thing. Here's the green light way to get out of a day at work. You call in and you tell your boss
diarrhea
that you have explosive diarrhea. They will not question it. They will just try to get off the phone as quickly as possible, and you'll be golden. Yeah. Summon that up. Eat some chili the night before so you don't need to lie about it.
My boss listens to this, dude.
I wish.
No, he does.
Really?
Yeah.
Your boss is a deer hunter?
Yeah, dude. He bought this farm out in the country. This is just a real short story. He bought this farm out in the country, and every year he's had a Boone and Crockett on it. And his first buck he's ever shot with a bow is like a high 150s.
Dude, you Iowa guys, it's not even right.
Yep.
Wow, this is amazing. So
like 13 acres.
Wow.
Something like that.
So he hears all the stuff you talk about, and he still keeps you hired?
Well, it's not like I trash anybody.
No.
Like the cubicle life, it can get to a guy.
Yeah, it can. Well, hello to Dan's boss. Thanks for being a fan. Okay. Well, we've kind of rambled on about our hunts. I've got one listener question that I want us to tackle here before we wrap up today's quick show.
Yep.
This comes from Jake in Arlington, Virginia. He says that I'll just quote, I went to a Washington Nationals game yesterday with my wife and got into conversation about walk-up songs before the batter goes up to hit. I'd love to hear what you and Dan talk about, or what you would talk about as far as walk-up songs to when you're going hunting, and if that would change throughout the year. Like, would you have a different walk-out song for the early season versus the rut versus the late season, etc. So, if you could have a walk-out song as you're heading to the stand, what would that be, Dan?
All right. So, first, I got to say something. Fred Bear by Ted Nugent, in my opinion, is not a good let's get ready for hunting song. Sorry. I probably pissed a lot of people off. I don't care. Second,
it's a classic though, man.
Yeah, I don't care if it's a classic. Yeah, it's a classic because it's the only song that they talk about hunting, and it's called Fredbear. I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm not. No. I don't feel it.
Okay.
I don't feel it.
So anyway, so what's your better alternative?
So I'm not the guy who's like, blah, 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 like metal is out. For me, country western, it mostly is out. I want some like really mellow, tiptoeing type stuff. So
now hold on. This isn't what you listen to. This is the song that would play as you triumphantly head to your stand, as if you were walking to the plate.
Yes. And when I'm heading to the tree stand, I'm not looking to headbang. I'm not looking to get crazy fired up. I'm ready to get focused. All right. So one song that comes to mind, Neil Young, Cortez the Killer.
I don't know if I know that one off the top of my head.
Yeah, because it was made probably before your dad was born.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, so Neil Young, Cortez the Killer.
Okay.
Or their anything off the album. What album is it? It's the Black Keys, and it's the album Brothers. So I like that whole album. So those are just two examples of just like some bum 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 ba da dun da da dun bum bum ba ba dun dun, and then
it's the most uninspiring solo. Music ever.
I know, just like some real laid back, chill music. It's not. Let me guess. You're going to be like glow sticks and shit on the way to the stand.
No, that's like my everyday life, man.
Oh, okay.
I got
fires.
Yeah, I gotta change it up for the tree stand. But basically, my walk up song to my office every day would be But yes, as you know, and as many people, past listeners know, I like some good EDM, dance, and techno music. That's like my pre-hunt truck drive music that I listen to.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think for my walkout song, I would have to steal a page out of the book of my alma mater and play the song that they play when the football team runs out into the field. Because like just that moment for me in college, like every time that happened, when the players come out and they play this song, it just gets me so amped up. And that is Thunderstruck by AC/DC. That song, walking up to the plate, would get me fired up and ready for a cold front on November 4th. Yeah. So I think that would have to be my pick. Oh. But I'll try Cortez the Killer, or Cortez the Coronado, or whatever the heck that thing's called.
Neil Young, and the song is Cortez the Killer.
Okay, I'll give that a try, and we'll see how that works for me.
Well, good luck with that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, dude, awesome elk hunt. I'm happy it was fun. And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to record one. Let's try to record one before my elk hunt next week. But if not, hopefully I'll have a story on that soon. So That's it for me, buddy. And that's it for the show too. So thank you for listening. My usual couple of reminders: make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you are subscribed to the Wired to Hunt YouTube channel. I got the video of my last day hunting in Montana up on there, so you can see that whole hunt. Check that out. Give it a like. Give it a subscribe. I would appreciate that so much. And otherwise, the one other thing I meant to mention is that Dan actually did a full 3-part series about his elk hunt, and I believe it was with Adam and Ryan, the guys he hunted with. He did that over on the Nine Finger Chronicles podcast. So if you want more details about that, be sure to check out his podcast there. Otherwise, stay tuned for more. It's going to be an exciting few weeks coming up here with elk and the Michigan season kicking off, the Iowa season kicking off for Dan. So hopefully we'll have some good stories for you on that front as well. Until next time, I guess I will just leave you by saying thank you again. Good luck on your seasons as well, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.